The year was 793. For the first time, a terrifying, ferocious group of warriors emerged in Europe, who were called the Monsters of the Seaways. This was because this group of warriors had established their own vast kingdom across Sweden, Denmark, Norway, and Finland. During their nearly 300-year reign, which lasted until the year 1066, they were invincible. In history, their time period is called the Viking Age. Yes, friends, today's story is about the Vikings. But this is a slightly different kind of story, which you will understand as soon as you see it. So, the story begins in Denmark. It was the age of the Vikings. On top of a mountain, a giant man was playing with his young child. Just then, a Viking chieftain, along with his men, arrives. They want to kill this giant. The giant sees the Vikings approaching from a distance, picks up his child in his arms, and starts to flee. But the Vikings had gotten very close to him, so the giant hides his child and begins to fight the Vikings all by himself. But a single giant couldn't possibly fight against so many men. The Vikings shoot arrows into the giant's chest and set his body on fire. The poor giant, writhing in pain, falls from the mountain and loses his life. The small child watches all of this while in hiding, and just then, the Viking chieftain's gaze also falls upon the child. He removes his mask and moves to attack the child with his sword, but as he's about to strike, he sees the child's innocent face and feels great pity, and so he leaves the child right there and walks away. His companions, however, believe that the chieftain has probably killed the child as well. Afterwards, the small child climbs down the mountain and goes to his father's corpse. He wanted to protect his father's body from the vultures and kites, but his father's corpse was so large that he couldn't even lift it. Then, the child picks up a sword and cuts his father's body into many pieces. He takes his father's head in his hands and goes inside his cave. Many years pass, and now that child has grown up. He is now quite large and has become even stronger than his father. But whenever he looks at his father's severed head, his memories come flooding back. He remembers his vow of revenge and begins to cry intensely. Meanwhile, the Vikings were celebrating because a new mead hall had been built in their village. The village chieftain was summoned to inaugurate it, and on the other side, the giant emerges from his cave. He is eager to take revenge for his father's death. That night, while many Vikings were celebrating in the mead hall, the giant arrives. He crushes the head of a guard standing watch outside, killing him. Now, he enters the mead hall and slaughters every Viking inside. This was quite easy for him because the Vikings were drunk and weak. The next morning, the village chieftain arrives at the scene with his men. As soon as he enters the hall, he is stunned by the sight. The bodies of all the Vikings were lying there in a gruesome state. They had all been killed mercilessly. The chieftain asks one of his men, "Where were you when all this was happening?" He replies, "I had gone back to the village. Some of the younger men had stayed here to celebrate. But the surprising thing was, whoever had come here hadn't attacked any of the nearby women or children." Seeing all this, the village chief becomes deeply worried. Next, we see another Viking chieftain, Leo. Leo was a very well-known warrior among the Vikings. The Vikings were, in reality, a type of raider. They would loot various towns and villages to secure their money and food. And most of the time, they preferred to live near water. These Vikings were on their way to raid another country. But just then, the weather began to turn bad, forcing them to stop near Denmark. So that night, the local chieftain takes some of his soldiers and sets out to find the one who killed the Vikings. But just as they advance a little, the giant suddenly appears behind the soldiers, and with a single blow, he kills one of the soldiers. Seeing this, the chieftain draws his own sword and chases after the giant. But the giant flees from there very quickly. The village chief couldn't understand at all why this giant was selectively killing his people. What did he actually want? So, the next day all the villagers come to see the bodies. The chieftain's wife tells him, "If this continues, only women and children will be left alive in our village." The chieftain had no answer to this, nor did he have any solution, so he remains silent in shame. So, after this, the chieftain's wife goes to a woman named Lena, who lived all alone on a mountain outside the village. The chieftain's wife says to her, "They say you can see death, even before it arrives. Tell me, will my husband also die, just like the others?" Hearing this, Lena says, "You people are the lowest of the low. First, your warriors abducted me from my village and brought me here. Then, they used my body as they pleased. And when they had their fill, They abandon me here all alone. They banish me from the village." Hearing this, the chieftain's wife says, "What happened to you was wrong, but I am not to blame for it." Lena replies, "None of that matters anymore. And yes, your husband will not die by the giant's hand, but all of your other warriors will." Hearing this, the chieftain's wife quietly leaves. Meanwhile, Leo and his companions arrive near the village. When a soldier on horseback spots them, he warns them, saying, "This land also belongs to the Vikings. If you've come here to raid, then turn back." Hearing this, when Leo introduces himself, the soldier recognizes him immediately. Leo says, "We only wish to rest here for a few days. We have no intention of harming anyone." Hearing this, the soldier is relieved and says, "I have heard many stories about you. Come, I will introduce you to our village chieftain." Now, Leo and his companions meet with the chieftain. The chieftain is overjoyed to see Leo and says, "The last time I saw your father, you were just a small child, and now you have become a great warrior." Leo nods happily upon hearing this. So, that night, the chieftain arranges a grand feast at the mead hall for Leo and his companions. The chieftain's wife herself serves them various kinds of mead to drink. So, during the feast, Leo asks, "How did so many women in this village become widows? Where have all the Viking warriors gone?" The chieftain says, "An unknown giant attacks us at night and has killed only the men." Hearing this, Leo says, "If the giant comes every night to kill Vikings, then tonight I will wait for it with my companions. I will kill it and put an end to all your troubles." So, after the feast, the chieftain and his wife return home along with the other villagers. But Leo stays behind, waiting with his warriors in the mead hall. And now, in the middle of the night, the giant arrives outside the mead hall. He first goes to the priest and begins to sniff him. Then he approaches the door, checking to see if the Vikings inside are locals, or if they have come from outside. Inside, Leo and his companions realize the giant has arrived. They immediately prepare for battle, but the giant senses that the Vikings inside the mead hall are not from this area. So, instead of entering, the giant urinates on the closed door. The Vikings then burst out, ready to fight the giant, but by then, the giant has vanished into the darkness. The next morning, the chieftain says to Leo, "This is a very strange thing. How did that giant leave you alive?" Leo replies, "Yes, it came to the door, but instead of fighting, it just urinated and left." After this, Leo takes some of his warriors, along with a few of the villagers, and heads to the mountains to find the giant. They hope they can track it down and kill it, but even after searching for a long time, they can't find the giant anywhere. Exhausted, they return to the village. A little while later, Leo goes alone to meet Lena, the woman who lived outside the village near the mountain. He says to Lena, "I've heard that you can see death before it arrives." Lena confirms that this is true. She then asks Leo, "Why have you come here?" Leo says, "I want to know, in this battle between the giant and the Vikings, who will die, and whether we can even kill this giant. It's important for me to know, because I want to protect my men." Hearing this, Lena begins to tell her tragic story, and says to Leo, "The Vikings of this village, they deserve this. Let them die. They raided my home, dragged me here, and then forced me to live a life of shame. As for the answer to your question, yes, I have seen the future. The giant will be killed, but many Vikings will die with it, and this land will turn red with blood. But again, I tell you, this is exactly what the Vikings of this village deserve." Lena also adds, "These Vikings did something terrible to that giant, and that is why they are suffering this punishment. You should stay far away from all of this." Before Leo could ask anything more, his companions arrive, looking for him. They say, "Boss, night is falling. We need to start our preparations." After this, Leo leaves with them. He goes back and asks the tribe's chieftain, "Has the giant ever killed a woman or a child?" The chieftain replies, "No, it only kills men." Leo says, "That means the giant is intelligent, and it also has certain principles." Hearing this, the chieftain becomes furious. He says, "Our men are dying, and you are praising it?" Leo says, "I am not praising it. I was just calculating that whatever it's doing it deliberately." The chieftain then says, 20 years ago, we killed a giant. After that, no giants were seen for a very long time. I don't know where this one came from." That night, Leo and his companions wait again in the mead hall for the giant to arrive. As soon as they sense the giant's presence, They grab their swords and rush outside, but the giant was nowhere to be found. In reality, the giant had seen that the same Vikings from outside were still there, and for this reason, the giant had left ahead of time, because it had no fight with these men. So the next morning, Leo goes to Lena again. He asks her, "Tell me, how do I kill the giant?" Lena replies, "Why don't you just return home with your companions?" Leo says, "Before I leave, I want to kill the giant and free the people here." After this, Lena takes Leo into her hut. She gathers some bones and begins to chant. Just then, Leo senses that the giant has arrived outside, but as soon as it sees Leo, it flees. Leo jumps on his horse and starts chasing the giant, but the giant quickly scales the mountain. Leo angrily shouts at it, "If you have the courage, then face me. Why do you always run away from me?" Just then, the giant says something in its own language and flees from there. But Leo can't understand its language at all. Lena, however, understands every word. She tells Leo, "The giant said, 'I have no quarrel with you. You and your companions have done me no harm, so I will not attack you.'" Leo is stunned to hear this. He goes back to Lena again and asks her, "If that's the case, then why did it come here?" Hearing this, Lena says, "I live here alone. So every night, one Viking warrior or another would come and try to take advantage of me. But ever since the giant started killing them, no one comes to bother me anymore. That is why I will not help you kill the giant, because I do not want this giant to die. This giant has already endured so much suffering in its life." After understanding all this, Leo goes to the chieftain. He tells him, "I spoke with the giant through Lena. It told me that the Viking warriors inflicted great atrocities upon it, and now it wants revenge." Hearing this, the chieftain becomes nervous. He says, "I will talk to you about this later." Leo is then walking towards his companions. Just then he sees some children beating a man very badly. Leo chases the children away, and then the man says to Leo, "My father actually fought against the giant's father. That's why the giant killed my entire family. I know where the giant lives. You can take your companions and kill it." Hearing this, Leo and his companions get into their boat and prepare to go to the cave where the giant lived. They climb the mountain looking for a path into the cave. One of the Vikings tries to go down, but his foot slips. Luckily, his companions manage to save him just in time. After this incident, no one else dared to go down, but a few soldiers urinate on the path to the cave, and then they turn back. As they were returning by boat, the giant, hiding under the water, attacks them. It tries to pull the Viking, who had been the first to urinate on the cave, into the water. But just then, the other soldiers attack the giant with their spears and save their companion's life. After this, all the soldiers return to the mead hall, and once again, they wait for the giant. But that night, the giant doesn't come at all. The next morning, when Leo steps out of the hall, he sees that the giant has killed the man who had shown them the way to the cave. Enraged, Leo goes back to the cave with his companions, and this time, they use ropes to descend into the cave. When they reached the inside of the cave, they saw some very strange things. One soldier smashed the giant's father's skull against the wall, shattering it, and immediately after, he urinated on it. The giant was not there at the time, but when it returned and saw the broken pieces of its father's skull, it used its keen sense of smell to figure out who had been there. And now, because its home had been attacked, it became crazed with rage. So that very night, when all the Vikings were asleep in the mead hall, the giant arrived at the scene, and first of all, it killed the soldier who had shattered its father's skull. Seeing this, Leo began to fight the giant, but the giant was much stronger than Leo. Meanwhile, after killing its target, the giant now tried to escape through the roof, but Leo grabbed its leg and pulled it back down. Leo wrapped a heavy iron chain around its hand. In a rage, the giant punched Leo and tried to break the chain, but its hand got stuck in it. A Viking shot an arrow at it, but the giant threw him aside, and before the others could do anything, the giant cut off its own hand and fled from there. It started to flee towards the sea, but it couldn't get far. The poor creature died on the seashore. But just then, suddenly, some unseen force dragged its body into the sea. Now, there was something remarkable to note here. That giant had very strong principles. If it wanted to, it could have killed everyone inside the mead hall, but but it only killed those people who had broken its father's skull. It gave its own life, but still, it did not kill a single innocent person. So, the next day the Vikings mourned their dead companions, and their bodies were burned. Leo told the chieftain, "You told me a half-truth. The giant is dead now. At least tell me the real truth." The chieftain finally confessed, "Yes, this giant had a father, whom we killed, for no reason at all. That giant had done nothing wrong. It had never even attacked a human, and finally, we are paying the price for that mistake." Anyway, that night, the Viking warriors hung the giant's severed hand in the mead hall and began to celebrate. They believed that the giant was now dead forever. After a while, most of the men returned to their homes. But Leo went to Lena's hut to see her. Lena said to Leo, "Just as I told you, the giant is dead, but you all still have much more suffering to endure." Then Lena began to tell Leo about her past. She said, "Many years ago, the giant came to me as well. He only spent one night with me, and after that, he never even touched me again. But I benefited from it. From that night on, no other Viking ever came to bother me." Lena also told Leo, the giant was not evil. He was just filled with the pain of his childhood. He saw his own father die, so he wanted to take revenge. While talking, Lena and Leo grew closer to each other, and soon they were lost in one another. On that dark night, the giant's mother entered the village. She had come to take revenge for her son's death. She came across the priest in the middle of the road and killed him. She had no principles. She was blinded by rage over her son's death. After that, she went to the mead hall and slaughtered every Viking inside. And then she took her son's severed hand and left. The next morning, a small boy secretly went to Lena. Lena told him to be quiet and left with him. Meanwhile, the Vikings calculated that the giant must still be alive, and that this same giant had committed all these murders. The Vikings set out to find the giant. While searching, they found a Viking's severed head on the seashore. Leo's suspicion grew stronger that perhaps the giant really was alive. He dove into the water alone and went inside the cave. Inside, he saw the giant's body lying on top of a rock, but as soon as he got close to the giant's mother attacked him from behind. She began to strangle Leo, to kill him, but Leo grabbed a rock and started to hit the woman's head, hard. Then Leo picked up his sword and killed the giant as well. And at that moment, a small boy, holding a sword, walked in. Seeing him, Leo understood what had really happened. This boy was the son of Lena and the giant. Leo looked at this child and felt great pity for him. Leo lowered his sword and did not harm the boy. And then, once again, history repeated itself. Later, Leo returned to the tribe and told the chieftain, "I am leaving. The giant and its mother are now truly dead." But before leaving, he went to see Lena one last time. He said, "If the people here find out that the giant also has a son, they will kill you both." Lena nodded and said, "This secret will remain only between us." After saying this, he left. And at the end of the story, Leo builds a grave for the giant and its mother outside Lena's house. From a distance, the giant's son watches all of this and cries uncontrollably. And after this, Leo returns to his home with his companions, and the story ends here. So, although this story was about Vikings, it didn't really show their heroism. The story was a bit unique and very simple. Let me know what you thought in the comments. I am signing off for today.